Hey everyone, it's DIZE here. And in today's video we are going to build an absolute crazy megapark on top of the Skate 3 city. These ramps are going to shoot us from one skyscraper to the next and let us skate in between them until we reach the ground. And as always, you will be able to download this park and play it on the emulator. So, after the last video, my original plan was to create a GTA 5 style parkour map. However, I used so many pieces in this park that it became completely corrupted. And after that, I took a break to recharge my creativity. And then I decided to build a giant super ultra mega park on top of the Skate 3 city. This building complex seemed like the ideal starting point, with the buildings being so close together, giving a lot of potential for good ramps. So this whole area looked really interesting, so I tried to spice it up by adding a pool, a big stair set and these brick banks, which are inspired by the real Brooklyn banks. I also added these ledges and rails just to add a touch of realism. At this point I realized that you could gain enough speed from the brick banks to grind down a rail that will lead you to the park and play rooftop. After finding the right angle for the rails, this spot is already super sick. You just gotta be a little bit crazy to hit it, because if you miss it... Next up I start to work on the first real ramps of the park. First I made this very steep ramp that goes almost straight down, giving you a lot of speed, but I also wanted another ramp right next to it that would take a different route. Looking at this skyscraper, I had this elevated roof part, so I added a platform on top of it, so now you can jump from the platform into the new mega ramp just to go super speed mode. Of course, these ramps need a proper landing ramp right here, which already skates really smooth. However, at this point I didn't really know yet how to continue, so I just tried to work on something else. Looking at these three buildings, it became clear that I wanted to build a ramp that you would drop into from here and then gap to the second building and then back onto this platform that I built earlier. So for the ramp I actually used mega terrain pieces, curving it slightly at the top so that it's easier to gap into. For the next ramp I just copied parts of the old ramp and then just continued on to the top of the building. Here I added another platform that will let you drop into the ramp, and after a lot of fine tuning it actually turned out to skate quite well. Since the rolling of this ramp felt a bit janky, I extended it slightly and added an additional area with a quarter pipe at the end. Having taken a break from it, I returned to work on the first two ramps and built this giant quarter pipe that will lead you into the opposite direction. Due to how these ramps are placed, the new route actually goes perfectly in between these two buildings, which is really satisfying in my opinion. However, while fine-tuning all the ramps, it became clear that one of these ramps needed a completely different route. So I added a second landing ramp underneath the first one. With limited space in every direction, I had the idea to build a ramp in a way so that it would let you skate onto the windows of the skyscraper. This was pretty difficult, but in the end I made it work, so have fun doing super realistic wall rides. Now that we have this big flat area on top of this building, I decided to add a second mini ramp bowl, complete with a small stair set leading up to it, just for all of you mini ramp lovers. since these buildings are so close to each other, I created this round rail so that you could grind from one roof to the next one. So if you're crazy enough to hit a rail like this, I'm sure you're going to land on the cover of the next Treasure magazine. And now we have to make a little cut. Because I built for roughly another hour or two, but Shadowplay decided to record the wrong screen.
Suck on a penis. Yeah, tonight I'm a...
Well, for the first ramp, you will now start to skate on the windows of the building, through these rainbow rails, then jump all the way over to the other side, into this ramp, go through a loop and continue onto the street. Yep, this is definitely the most chaotic route yet. The other ramp is also complete, with the final gap bringing you all the way over here to land into this bank. So yeah, that's pretty sick. I also added this whole mini park area at the top of the first ramp, featuring a quarter pipe, a grass gap and a fun box. Nothing special, but somehow it really fits right here.
I mean, it's alright, like...
But after so many problems with skate crashing, Nvidia Shadowplay not recording, and having low FPS while playing, it was time. Time for a better PC. So I ordered a little upgrade and built everything together. Not gonna lie, I was super nervous since this was my first time actually building a whole computer by myself. But it actually went quite well, and the goddamn GPU does not fit in my case! So with a new case I could finally finish up my new PC, and look at this beauty. Finally, skate no longer crashes, I can record everything without any problems, my frames have doubled, and I finally have sound in this game!
Sit in the dark and ponder how one bit to make the bottom.
Well, continuing with the build, this part of the ramp looks still a bit boring, so I decided to add a small grass gap in the middle of it. Linked to the rainbow rails, I created a long rail that allows you to grind from this part of the ramp all the way along the rainbow rails over here, gap into this ramp, then into this one, ultimately landing in this half pipe that leads you down to the ground floor. After this, I noticed that just jumping to the street right here is kinda lame. So I started to build a big rail that reaches over the whole street to this different area right here. I even took the extra time to add real support rails just to make everything appear a bit more realistic. I mean, yeah, these ramps, realistic, but at least they will look good, right? While I was at it, I also smoothed out this ramp at the top and then started to work on the next ramp, which I want to be right next to it. My goal was to make this entire area the top starting point of the whole park, so that there will be many ramps reaching out into the park from this platform. Keeping this in mind, I just connected the new ramp upwards to the old ramp and formed a flat surface at the top. I tried out many different shapes, but concluded that a normal square with one elevated part would work best. However, now a new problem appeared. For some reason, teleports often crash the game.
Huh?
Therefore, I wanted to take care of it by making every ramp accessible by foot. So I added this long stair set right next to this building. And with this, now when you load into the park and start at the park and play area, you can walk up this rail and then this long stair set to get to the ramps. This might take some time, but hey, at least your game won't crash. Continuing on, I tried to add more suspension beams underneath the ramps. Normally I used small rails, but with these huge ramps we kinda need something bigger. So I just built a few of those straight down underneath, and for the ramps that are higher up I just decided to connect them to the building front. But here the very first ramps were the biggest problem. These kinda just hang in the middle of all buildings, so connecting the suspension beams to each other to make them appear more sturdy seemed like the only good solution. I also needed to place these angled ones perfectly so that you could still skate through the hole, which was a bit tricky, but in the end I made it work. With this task complete, I shifted my focus to creating a whole different ramp on another building. The finished product is this line that lets you get from this roof into a quarter pipe to gain speed, to then jump into a huge landing ramp that is placed on top of the loop that will then shoot you over to this quarter pipe right here. I didn't know yet how to continue from here, so I went back to the other new ramp. For it I needed a new landing ramp, so I just used the mega terrain one and placed a huge quarter pipe on the other end. I actually kept the kicker ramp relatively flat, since you already start from the highest building and don't need a huge air to get to the other building. With this ramp finished, I actually was at the limit of how many pieces I can use before the park begins to break, but somehow the park did not feel finished. Trying to find solutions that would somehow give me more pieces back, I looked at the park and what elements were the least fun. And it sadly had to be the pool area. Yeah, I know, I also don't really want to delete it, but as you can see, it's super laggy anyway. And just to be sure, I asked you guys on Twitter and you agreed that I should probably get rid of it. Follow me on Twitter. Okay, I deleted the pool, however I still wanted to keep the Brooklyn banks, so I just connected them to the actual roof of the building, which worked pretty good. And here I realized you could potentially get into the banks from up here and perhaps even gain enough speed to make a huge gap over to the park and play area. But as you can see, no matter how I fine-tuned the banks, every time you gap into them, you kinda glitch out and lose all your speed. This was a real bummer, since I really liked the idea of gapping over this massive skyscraper drop. So I switched out the Brooklyn banks for these concrete quarter pipes, which will 100% do the job. All that was left for it to work was one small landing piece, and while I'm quite sad to let go of the Brooklyn banks, this quarter pipe actually looks nice too. And you gotta admit, this huge gap onto the second level of the park and play garage is just so clean. As you can see, I even added another quarter pipe to launch you to the next level of the garage, and another ramp right here, with that you can hit one more gap. So as you can see by now, we start to have way too many routes that you can skate along, which I'm always a fan of. After this, I wanted to add at least a few things to the former pool area, so I thought that a ramp that will let you drop into a big quarter pipe at the bottom would be a cool, unique thing. This would also form a new transfer from this ramp down to this, connecting the whole park even more. I also added this ramp with that you can gain some speed to hit two different lines. The first one lets you get into this ramp to then get all the way over to this area. And the second one makes you drop into this quarter pipe all the way down here that is placed on top of this tree to then gap into the same area. Now I wanted to create one last ramp on the highest building. To gain more terrain space, I just deleted the walls underneath the platform and switched them out with more suspension beams, making it blend seamlessly with the rest of the park. For the last ramp, I knew that I wanted to go in this direction, and I tried out many different designs. What I came up with was this wobbly long downwards ramp that will give you a lot of speed to then skate into this quarter pipe and transfer over into this half pipe on the next building. This worked really well, but I just didn't really like the look of the ramp, so instead I deleted a few pieces in between to make it a fast triple gap ramp. As you can see, this immediately made it look way better, and now this is probably the most fun and satisfying ramp of the park. But how can I make it even better? Well, why not use the speed you gain from this huge transfer to make a super long grind up to the other building? Yeah, maybe I should add a quarter pipe right here. And with that, the park is actually finally finished. I personally really like how this park turned out, and if you want to skate it too, of course you can. In the description will be a link to my Discord server, which contains these skate park files for the emulator, as well as a tutorial on how to install them. But enough talking, now let's finally skate it. And that's it. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to download this part and skate it. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye!